So John Stewart 3244 has, I think he's criticising my comments about Farage and the newspaper headlines yesterday. He says, a 12-year-old boy, now 62, sang bawdy songs 50 years ago. Talk about scraping the barrel. Well, the point is, the comment is a neat encapsulation of a common confusion in the debate, the conflation of bawdy humour with racist humour. They are not merely different in degree, but different in kind. And I think that needs to be established. Britain has a long and proud tradition of risque, cheeky entertainment. Its variety stages, music halls, end-of-pier shows, early television carried a repertoire that was often suggestive, occasionally crude, but rooted in innuendo, playfulness, and the tacit understanding that boundaries were to be teased rather than crossed into cruelty. Bawdy material concerns sex, flirtation, mischief, social taboo, handled with levity. It may embarrass, it doesn't dehumanize. Racist material targets ethnicity, religion, or identity. It diminishes human dignity, normalizes hatred, and historically fed into structural prejudices. The two sit on entirely different moral planes. To mistake one for the other is to misunderstand both the ethics of humour and the historical context. Variety theatre in the UK flourished from the late Victorian period well into the mid-20th century. It lived on in television long after the music halls had died, from the good old days to the legacy visible in early ITV light entertainment and a Sunday night at the London Palladium, all that sort of stuff. I've made two much longer films on YouTube about this, the history of the music hall part 1, the history of the music hall part 2. The history of the music hall part 2 got a few awards. Mary Lloyd is the canonical figure of bawdy performance. Her songs were full of double meanings, never explicitly obscene, but rich in innuendo. A little of what you fancy does you good, celebrated flirtation and indulgence with a wink to sensual pleasure. She sits among the cabbages and peas. Well, I don't know whether that's entirely true. The humour depends entirely on the intentionally ambiguous final word. Oh, Mr. Porter, what shall I do? Layers its jokes on misunderstandings of propriety and desire. The brilliance of Mary Lloyd was that nothing needed spelling out. The audience understood precisely what was being hinted at without anything being crude that was said directly. Max Miller, the cheeky chappie in Brighton, refined this tradition. He carried a blue book and a white book and would theatrically choose which to use, the blue implying something racier. He was repeatedly censored by the BBC, though many of his routines were more suggestive than explicit. Jokes about lovers misunderstanding each other in the dark, sketches about errant husbands and flirtatious widows, wordplay that skirted the line without ever really tripping into obscenity. His tone was bold, knowing, mischievous, but not malicious. This was the culture of bawdy humour, a consensual game between performer and audience, grounded in complicity and common understanding. Variety on TV, the post-war decade, saw variety migrate onto television. Saturday night at the London Palladium, of course, or was it Sunday? The Wheel Tappers, the Shunters Social Club, and later the nostalgic The Good Old Days. Even into the 1980s and 1990s, programmes retained that flavour of variety. Comedians doing short spots, singers, novelty acts, jugglers, magicians. It was family entertainment shaped by the ghosts who developed and staffed the music halls. The key point is that even at its cheekiest, TV variety preserved bawdiness, not racist abuse. And when we analyse the charges, actually even something as appalling as the black and white minstrels was not overtly racist. I think it would be unacceptable, completely unacceptable, and considered racist today. But at the time, it was not intending, I think, to be racist. When we analyse the charges against Farage, the distinction is essential. To sing a bawdy song or shout a cheeky line at school fits into a well-established British comic tradition, going all the way back, encapsulated by Molesworth and so on. But what the witnesses from Dulwich describe is not bawdiness, It's racism. Chants, taunts, deliberately inflammatory references to Nazism. To understand why this is so serious, we must remember what racism in the 1970s, in 1970s entertainment actually looked like. It was pervasive, casual and normalised, but that doesn't make it correct. The examples are legion. Bernard Manning built entire routines around racist stereotypes, especially black and Asian people. Jim Davidson sustained racist caricatures such as Chalky White, Roy Chubby Brown, brutally misogynistic, brilliantly dressed, and material saturated in racism, deliberately caught in cruelty. Sitcoms were steeped in racist framing and stereotypes. I identify the programs, but I don't need to repeat their content. Love Thy Neighbour, premised on hostility between a white couple and a black couple next door. Mind Your Language, portraying foreign students as walking stereotypes. It Ain't Half Hot, Mum mocked South Asian characters in ways that would be unthinkable today. Contrast this with the later, more reflective approach of Till Death Us Do Part, where Alf Garnett is not a figure of admiration, but an explicit criticism, an explicit figure to criticise bigotry. It used racism to expose racism, not to affirm it. And the allegation against Farage from former classmates is not that he joined in the normal rough and tumble of adolescent humour. It is that he used racist slogans, Nazi references, anti-Semitic chanting as a form of intimidation. That is not akin to bawdy music hall banter. It belongs to the darker strand of British comedic history that was never innocent and never risk-free for its targets. When people defend him with the line, "It was only a boy singing songs," they flatten, or singing bawdy songs, they flatten two traditions that British culture kept rigorously separate. Bawdy belongs to a national repertoire of mischief, epitomised in the Carry On films and Frankie Howard. No, bitter. And racism belongs to a history of humiliation and exclusion. The difference is moral, not merely contextual. And the UK is quite capable of reviving the playful spirit of its variety tradition without reopening the wounds of the racist 1970s. Modern comedy thrives precisely because it's learnt the difference. Mary Lloyd and Max Miller remain icons. Bernard Manning is not an icon. To ignore that distinction is to misread British history, to misunderstand the ethical fault line running through its entertainment culture, and to dismiss Farage's past as a couple of bawdy songs is to misrepresent the coverage that was in the press yesterday, to misrepresent that completely. And as I said yesterday, that coverage was not anything new. It's been around for a while, but it is interesting to see it all in one place.